Hello and welcome to this part of the Gatling step-by-step masterclass. So in the earlier sessions, we have covered all these topics. So we have covered all this in the earlier sessions. Today, we are going to start with API testing. So this is what we are going to do today, and I'm going to go very basic step by step. Do not worry if you are a complete beginner. I will tell you each and every step and I will show you how it is done. You can follow along with me with hands-on, and whenever you have any questions, if you face any issues, you can let me know in the comment section. So let's get started. So here I will go to my project and I will go to the src test Scala folder. So I'm here src test Scala, and under this folder we have our simulation scripts. Okay, so I'm going to create a new class here where I will create a simulation script. So you can directly create it under the Scala folder, or you can create a new package and then add your script. Now just in case if you are using a Java project or a Kotlin project, you can check some Gatling examples. So if you just say Gatling quick start, you will see the page, the Gatling quick start official documentation, and here if you scroll down you will see a demo, a Gatling scenario, and here you can see all the examples in Java, Kotlin, Scala. Okay, so just in case I'm going to do it in Scala. In case you are following or you are creating a project with Java, you can check the Java examples, or if you are using Kotlin, you can check the Kotlin example. And in this documentation you can see uh, any topic that you are doing. You will find all these examples in all the three programming languages. So whenever you have any doubts, whenever you want to see the syntax or how it is done, you can always check these examples from the Gatling official documentation. So here I am going to my Scala folder. I will do a right click and first I will create a new package. So I am going to create a new package here and I will call it as API. You can call it anything. This is for easy referencing. And now under this API package, I will again do a right click and create a new Scala class. Okay, now make sure that your Scala folder is marked as test sources root, and then only you will get the option. So let's say if you do a right click here, or you can do a right click on the project and go to you will find it here, or you can just go to your file, the menu file, and here when you go to project structure and you go to this modules section here, you can see here the Scala folder is marked as test sources folders. Okay, and in case it is not marked, you can always do a right click on the Scala folder and say mark directory as, and you will find option for test sources root. I'm not getting that option because it is already marked, and the resources folder should be marked as test resources root. So I will again go to my API package, do a right click and create a new Scala class, and I will call it as API demo. You can call it anything, and the class is created here. Okay, now so we have done step number 1, and now we should extend the class from the Gatling simulation class. We have already learned this is what we have to do for every Gatling script. So I will say extends and simulation. So make sure that this should come from the Gatling class. If you want, you can also copy this from any of our earlier scripts or earlier classes, and as I have done this, you can also check I have got this import statement, so this is fine. Now these are the two basic imports we require for any basic Gatling script. So let me manually also add these two imports. I will say import io.gatling gatling dot core, and then I will say dot predef dot underscore, so that it will also import all the child libraries from here. And in the, if I am doing this, I don't need the first line or the first import here, so I will remove this, and then I will also say import io dot gatling dot http and dot predef dot underscore. So this is not used as of now, it is not used for any function or anywhere in this class, and that is why it is grayed out, but we will use it later. Then here, for any basic Gatling script, we need these three sections: protocol, scenario, setup. Out of this, setup is the mandatory part, mandatory section for any Gatling script. We can we generally have the scenario and the protocol within the setup section, but it will make our code very it will not be very readable, and it will not be very modular, and therefore we define the protocol separately, the scenario separately, and then finally in the setup part we refer both protocol, scenario, and also give the user load. So let us create three parts. I will say this should be protocol here, then we will have scenario, and then we will have the setup part. All right, so now here in the protocol I will say val and give some protocol name. I will just say HTTP protocol. You can give any name here, and equals, I will say HTTP dot base URL. So in the protocol part we can give all the common configuration, we can give the base URL, and then we can give the common headers and all the common configuration that we have to add to our requests. So here for this demo, if you have your own APIs for testing, you can use them. If you have any demo APIs, you can use those APIs, or if you want, you can also go to, I will go to this website reqres.in, and this has some sample demo APIs that we can use for testing. So you can see we have some get APIs, we have post APIs for creating a resource, then we have put, patch, delete, etc. So we can take APIs from here. So the first one is a get API, which is list users, and this will give a list of users in the response. Let us go with the second API, which is again a get request, and this will return a single user in the response. So we can go with this, and to see the complete URL or the endpoint, you can click here. So when you click here, it will give you the complete URL. Out of this, if you see in most of the APIs, this part until API is common, so we can take it as a base URL, and the rest of the part we will give in the individual requests. So this part I will put here within the base URL, and then after this we can also add some headers if there are any headers we want to set in the common configuration. But for this particular API we don't require it, these are demo APIs, so I'm just having the base URL here, and then I will have the scenario. So in the scenario I will say val, and let us say the scenario name is scn equals, and I will say scenario, give it a name. I will call it as get API request, or let me say get user. I will say this is get API demo, and then I will create the exec block. I will say .exec, and now within the brackets I will say http dot request. So I will have to say here I will say http and give the request name here. So this here I will say the request name is get user. I will put it in the next line for easy readability, and after that I will have to say whether what is the method. So this will be a get request. I will say dot get, and here I will give the endpoint. So now I will have to give the URL after this base URL. So this is /users and /2. Okay, so when we send the request, this will get appended to the base URL, and that will create the complete URL. Okay, so we are able to send this request. Now after this, so you can see here we have created our request. This is our request, and this completes the request, and this will send a get request to this particular endpoint. But if we want to check the response, we can also do that, and for that we can add the check function. I will say dot check, and I can say status. So let us check the status. I will say status dot is. So we have a lot of checks and functions. So I want to check the status is 200. So for any successful get request, the successful response code is 200. So this is what we are checking. So this is what we should get. Okay, so we have done this. Now we can also add a check for the response values. So I can say dot check, and here, because this is a JSON response, you can see this is a JSON response. So to check any value, we will have to give the JSON path for that particular value or that particular tag, and then we can verify whether the value is equal to some particular value. So I will say here JSON path, and we are getting this auto suggestion as well, and here I will give the JSON path, and then I will say dot is and give some value that I want to check it against. Okay, so this is the syntax: dot check JSON path, and give the JSON path here of that value, and then the value here. So I will have to find, let us say I want to check the name, first name is Janet here, and for that I have to give the JSON path of this value. So for that you can copy this response and go to any JSON formatter, or a good option is JSON path finder. So you can go here, or you can use any online tool. JSON Pathfinder also has a Chrome extension, so you can also use that. So just copy your JSON message here or JSON content here. First click on beautify here, so it will it will correct all the formatting, and in case there are any errors, if it is not a proper JSON, also it will tell that. And then if you see here on the right section, and if I expand this, you can see it has converted our JSON content as a tree structure, and now whatever value you want to check or you want to generate JSON path for, you can just click on that value. So I want this, I will click here, and as I click here, you can see here you will get the path generated. Okay, so you can just copy it from here and give it here in the JSON path function, and here it starts with the root $. So if you are starting from the root is always $, and then go to data and then first name, and then I will check the value which should be equal to Janet. Alright, so this is our checks. If you want, you can add more checks as you need. Also, if you want, you can have a single check block and add all the checks in a single check block. So for that, let me show you. I will say dot check and a bracket start and stop, and all these checks I will put inside this single check block. So I will copy this status is 200 here, and then give a comma at the end. Then I will copy this JSON path check and then go to the new line and add it. And similarly, if you have more checks, you can keep on adding a comma at the end and add all the checks. And now I don't need these separate checks, so I will remove them, and this is done. So we have created our very simple get API request, and then I will come to the setup part. Here I will say setup, I will use the setup method, and then I will say use the scenario name, which is scn here. So I will say scn dot, I will say inject, and you can use any strategy you want. For now I will just say at once users, and I will just try to run it with 10 virtual users. Okay, so this is our script, the simulation script here, and you can see here we have the imports here. Then we have the class declaration, which extends the simulation class of Gatling. Then we have the protocol section, then we have the scenario section, and then finally the setup section. Okay, so we have done all this. So this is what we have done, and you can see this is exactly what we have done here. So let us now, I will save and run. So save this and run the engine class, and then we will select this particular simulation. So here this is our simulation, which is at index number 0. So I will say 0 and give some description and start the run. So this is running. Okay, this is giving an error, and I believe I know the issue is we did not add the protocol in the setup, which is a mistake. We should add the protocol. So here I should say protocols, and the protocol we have given the name is HTTP protocol. So I will save this and run the engine class again. And here I will select the simulation 0, give some description and start the run. Now during this demo, when you are doing hands-on, if you face any issues, you can check online. You will find a lot of resources, a lot of help, and still if you are still facing any issues, you can always let me know in the comment section. So this is done, and if I check the report here, so everything looks okay in the console, and let us open the report and check. And yes, looks like everything is running fine, and this is our get user, which is running fine here. And if I see here, everything is okay. Okay, this is all running fine. Now let me just to verify. So here, just to verify that our checks are working fine, if I change this value in the checks, let us say instead of finding first name Janet, I will say check the first name is John, and I will save and run. So this time it should fail, and let us see if we get this in the report as well. So I will run this again and check. Okay, you can see here in the console itself we are getting these errors that the first name is John but actually found Janet. And if I check this in the report, if I open the report and see, and yes, you can see here also it is showing as a failure, and if I scroll down, here is our failure. We are finding John here, but actually it is Janet. So what we are expecting is not equal to what is there actually. So that is why it has failed, and that is fine. That's what we wanted. So I will again change it back to Janet. Alright, so we have done a very simple get API test, and we are able to run it. Now let us see some example for post, put and delete APIs as well. And here we can take example from the same website. Here we have a post request. Here post is to create a resource. Now here there will be a difference. In a post request or in a put request, we also give the request body along with the request. So this is also called as payload or a request body. So let us see how do we do that. So here in my class I can continue in the same scenario and create one more request, or let me just use a different scenario. I can also add a pause here for, let's say, 2 seconds, and then I will create a new scenario. I will say val scn2 equals scenario and give some name of the scenario. Let me see, it should be I will give a name here. I will say post API demo, and then I will create a exec block and say HTTP and give a request name. So this will be create user, and you can also give some meaningful scenario names as well. So this will be, instead of scn2 I will say create user. This, instead of scn I will say get user, and if I do this I will also have to change it here. This what we ran was get user scenario. Okay, so here this is create user, and here the method will be post. So I will say post here. I'm also getting auto suggestions, and then I will give the endpoint after the base URL. So if I see this is my post request. If I check the complete URL, this is what it is, and after API, which is until here we have our base URL. So after this we just have this /users. So this I will copy and give in my request here. The part before this will be coming from our base URL from here. Okay, and after this if you want to add some headers, you can add that. For example, you can say dot headers, and let us say a common header will be content type, and then I can give the value as application JSON. So you can keep on adding the headers as well, although for this dummy APIs, demo APIs, we don't need all this. Even if there are some authorizations, you can add it. As of now, the main thing we have to do here is to add the request body. So you can see the request body is a JSON. So first thing I can say is post as JSON, and this is equal to the header content type. If I say header content type application JSON, that also tells the server that the payload we are sending, the request we are sending, is of type JSON, or we can just say as JSON. And then I will say dot body. So here we are going to give the body. Now here the body we are going to give is a JSON content. So here I can also say here string body. So I can say string body, and the content we are going to take here is going to be a JSON content, and we want it to be sent as it is. And for that you can give 3 double quotes here, and it has already taken the end quotes, and then I'm in the middle of these 3 double quotes. I will press enter, so it takes me to the new line, and also it adds all the required formatting, the pipe symbols, whatever it needs, it has added. And I'll just copy this JSON body here and paste it here. So you can see this is how it looks like now. Okay, so it has taken all this itself. dot strip margin and all these formatting it has taken itself. I have just added string body and then given 3 double quotes, and then I have added the data, the body inside the 3 double quotes. Also at the end, if you want, you can say dot as JSON, so this should go as a JSON. So you can give it here or here, it is all fine. Okay, so this will send the body. Now if you want, you can also take this request body from an external source like a file, and I will tell you how it is done in a moment. But for now, let us see how we will run this. After this, if you want to have some checks, you can also add the check block, and I can say I can have a check for status. I can say status is, and in case of a successful post request, the status is 201. Then I can again add some response value checks, and for that I will have to get a JSON path, because again you can see it is a JSON path. So I will say JSON path and give the JSON path here, and then say dot is and whatever I want to check the value. So for this is the response we will get. And if I take it to JSON path finder, add it here, beautify, and here you can see we get this. Let us say I want to check name. So this is the JSON path, because it is directly after the root, so we can say here dollar name, it will come here, dollar name will come here, and then whatever value we want to check. So let us say if I send here Henry, we should get Henry in the response as well. So let me check this, and that's it. And now to add it here, you can either change this get user with this scenario, create user, or the other way is I can also add all this in a single setup block. So here I will say this is for get users, I will give a comma, and then I will say also run the create user, and I will say inject, and let me just run this with maybe 7 users, and the protocol is common for both of these. In case you want, and in case the protocol is different, you can also add the protocol for each request or each scenario like this as well. But in this case, because it is common, we are ending it at the end like this. Okay, so let us save and run and check. I am running the engine class, and I will select the simulation which is at index number 0, and I will run it. Okay, so this is done. It is saying failed. Let me check. If I go to the report, okay, the report looks okay. Also we can see this is how the users are looking like here. So we have 10 users and 7 users, then it is ramping down. So this looks okay. If I go to the details, this is for create user, this is for get and create users. All this is looking fine. Let me check. If I check here, okay, everything is fine. I think what I saw was this, and it is saying failed is 0%. I think that was my mistake. Otherwise I don't see any problems here. Yeah, everything is fine. Alright, this is all fine and running fine. So we are able to run a post API or a create request, and we have given the body here. Okay, now in case you want to refer this body from a external file, so let us say this JSON request body or the payload I will have separately. So I will go to my resources folder, and whenever you have to get something from an external file, it is good to put it under the resources folder so that you can directly refer it. So here I will go to the resources folder, and I'm going to create, You can directly put a directly create a file under the resources folder, or I will first create another folder. I will do a right click here and say new and say directory, and I will call this as data. You can call it anything, and then under the data folder I will again do a right click and create a new file, and I will call it as, let us say, user.json, because this is going to be a JSON content, and I will copy and paste the JSON content here. Okay, now in my request, so you can see this part, this is what I am, this is where I am giving the body. So instead of this, I want to take the body from a file. So I will here say dot, and I will say raw file body. So let us see if I get some option here. So I'm not getting any suggestion. Let me just very quickly check this. Okay, I have to first say dot body. Oh, my mistake. I will say dot body, and then I will say raw file body, and here you can see I'm getting this auto suggestion as well. Now here make sure that you select the right function. If I say here raw in lowercase, so you will find there is also a function called raw file bodies, and this is what we don't need. What we need is this one with a uppercase R raw file body. Okay, so use this, and here you have to give the location of your file. Now if your file is under the resources folder, you can directly refer it, but if it is somewhere else, you will have to give the relative path from the project folder, or maybe the absolute path. But because it is under our resources folder, so I will give a path relative to the resources folder. So under resources folder we have a folder called data, so I will say data here, then /, then we have this file user.json. I will say user.json here. Okay, so this is our body. If you want, you can also say as JSON. And now I don't need this part, so I will select this and comment it out. I can say control and /, it will comment it out. If you want, you can also delete this part now. I am just keeping it here so that in case I will have to refer it later, so I'm keeping it here. But otherwise, now our request will be referred from this file, and you can now save, run and check. So here I will run and check. I will say 0 here and start the run. Now here you can see we have one error, and that is okay, because here we were trying to check Henry, but we found Morpheus, which is it has taken from the file, which is good. So if I check the report also, you can see here it is all fine, and the error is because in the file we have name as Morpheus, but in the response we are checking Henry. So let us correct that. So I will go to my project, and here we are checking Henry, and here in our file it is Morpheus. So let me again change it here. You can change it anywhere, either here or in the assertion or in the check. Now we also have assertions in Gatling, which we will learn later. As of now we are doing checks for a particular request. We add assertions for the mostly for the complete performance test at a global level, or also at a request level, that we will learn later. So I have fixed this. Now I will try to save and run again, and I will check it. So this should pass this time, and yes, looks like everything is fine. If I check the report, and everything is working fine. Okay, this is all running okay. Okay, so this is how we can also use the request bodies. This is how we can run it. So this is an example here. This is exactly what we have done, and this will be the post request will be similar to a put request also. So if I try to create a put or an update request, this is an update request, and if I try to add it here, so let me create another scenario. I will say val update user equals, I will add the scenario name. I will say this is update, or I will say put API demo, and then I will create a exec block, and here I will say HTTP and give a request name which is update user, and then I will say this is put and give the endpoint. Now in case of put, we have to refer to a particular user, therefore in the endpoint you can see we are having /users and / a specific user, ID of a specific user. So I will put it here. Now here in the put also we have a request body or a payload, so I can give the request body in the same way as we have seen earlier. We can give it within our request, or we can refer it from a external file. And if you see here, in this particular case, the request body is exactly similar to what we have in our post or create request. So I will just refer it from the same file, or I'll just copy this line and I will give it here. Okay, so this should work. And also the checks I will copy from here and give it here, because the checks are also going to be similar. The response code should be, the status code should be 200, and the JSON path of the name in the response is also going to be the same here. So this is all fine, and I will add this in the setup part as well. So I will give a comma at the end here, and I will say here update user scenario, and let us say I want to run it with 5 users. I will save this and run the engine class, and here I will run this simulation, and looks like everything is okay. If I check the report, and yes, everything looks okay. And here you can see this is the user load. So some users are running the put API demo, some are running the post API demo, some are running the get API demo, and here we have got all our requests running. Get, create, update, everything is running fine. Okay, and so we have done this. Let us also see the last one, which is the delete API. So if I go here, we have also got this delete API, and here this is the endpoint, and in the response we can just check the status code, which should be 204. So here I will create another scenario. I will say delete user, and the scenario name I will say delete API demo, and the exec block, the request name delete user, and then I will say dot delete, and the endpoint, which is this one /users /2, and that's it. I do not have to give anything else here. If there are any headers in the request, you can send it, but I can just now add the check here. So I'll just say here, this is what I'm checking. The status should be 204, and I will add it here. I will say delete user dot inject, and I will say at once users, let me say 9 users to run it with, and save and run the engine class. I'm selecting the simulation and run it. So you can try with different APIs. If you have your own APIs, you can try with that. With them, you can take any demo APIs as well, and you can do some hands-on. And looks like everything is fine. If I check the report, everything looks okay here, and you can see the user load here. We have now different users running different APIs, and these are all the APIs running fine. Alright, so we are able to run all the different APIs. Okay. Now the next topic is feeders, or how do we do parameterization in Gatling. So in Gatling, we can use some external data sources like CSV file, JSON files. We have already seen one example of how can we refer a JSON file in APIs, but in general, if you have to do parameterization, we get the data from external files, and to get the data we use feeders in Gatling. Okay, so we will see how to use feeders and the different strategies. So let me first go to my project, and I will go to the Scala folder, and let me create a new package. First, under the Scala folder, I will say new package and call it as demo. You can call it anything, it is just for keeping it separately. I'm creating a new package, and here I will create in the demo folder or demo package, I will do a right click and create a new Scala class. Now again, if you are using Java or Kotlin, you can always check the syntax from the Gatling official documentation. So when you go to the Gatling official documentation, you can see all these different syntaxes for Scala, Java, Kotlin. In fact, you will directly find feeders section also here in this documentation, and you can check the feeders example for your particular language as well. So for now, I will give the class name. I will say feeders demo, or you can give any name here and create the class. Now we know the first thing we have to do is extend the class from the Gatling Simulation class. So I will say extends simulation, and also I will import the basic imports we do in a Gatling script, io.gatling.core dot predef dot underscore, and if you do this, we don't require this import, so I will remove this, and the other import we need is io.gatling.http, and I will say .predef to also add the child libraries. Okay, now we know in any Gatling script we have protocol, then we have scenario, and then we have the setup. And in general, setup is the only method required, setup is the only section required. The protocol and scenarios are referenced in the setup section, and the reason we add protocol and scenario separately is for easy readability and for easy maintenance of the code. Okay, now here in Gatling, these are the different examples for feeder syntax in Java, then in Scala, and then in Kotlin. So you can use whatever language you are using, you can check the example. And here I will say Now here let me first create some file. I will create a CSV file and I will go to my resources folder, and we already have this data folder created in our earlier session of APIs. So I'm going to use the same folder. If you want, you can create a new folder or just put your file under resources folder. I will do a right click here and say new and say file, and I will call the file as data.csv. You can call it anything. And now this file has come here. So this is a CSV or comma separated value files. So here I will add some data. Let us say name, job, and let us say ID, whatever you want. You can add some name here. Let us say the first set of data, I will say Raghav teacher 01, and then I can add more data here. John manager 02. I can say Albert student, or let us say scientist 03. So we have got some data here. Now of course when you see this in a CSV formatted file, you will see this in different cells and columns, but otherwise you can just add data like this in comma separated values. So the first row is the header row, and this is all the data we have. So create and save your file, and I will come back to the class. Now here we will see a running demo of how we can refer these data values, this data, and then use it in our actual request. But for now, just to show a demo of feeders and how do we use the feeders, I will go to my scenario part and say well, and I will just give some variable here. Let me say CSV feeder, and I will say equals, and here I will say I will use the I will say here this is a CSV file, so I will say CSV, and I will give the location of the file. Now here, as I have shown here, this syntax can change based on the language you are using. So if you are using Scala, this is what I am doing, val feeder equals CSV, and I can give the location of my file, and here this is the strategy. So I will tell you about the strategy in a moment. So if it is Java, this is what you will use. If it is Kotlin, this is what you will use. You can also check these examples on the Gatling official documentation page as well. So I will say CSV, and the location I can give, because now my CSV file is under the resources folder, I can give a location which is in reference to the resources folder. So I can just say data, which is this data folder, and then the file name data.csv. So I will say this is data/data.csv, and then I will use the strategy. So you can see there are different strategy. Random, I am using random as of now. So these strategies are, if you don't give any strategy, it is queue by default, which takes the values sequentially, and this will throw an error at the end of the line. If it runs out of lines, it will throw error. The other strategy is shuffle. It also works like queue, but values are chosen randomly, and again it will throw error if it runs out of lines. Then we have the random strategy. Now here the values are chosen randomly, and also same value can be chosen several times, and it will not throw error if it reaches at the end of the line, or if it has used all the values. Still it will keep on choosing values randomly from the file, but it will not throw error. Then we have circular. It takes values in sequence in order, and again it will not throw error when it reaches the end of the line or the last row. It will return to the first row or the first value. Okay, so let me use this one. I will say dot circular here. Okay, now I will create a scenario. I will say val scn equals, I will give a scenario name. I will call it as feeder demo, and then I will say dot feed. So this is the function we use in our scenario, dot feed, and give my feeder, which is CSV feeder here. Now in case you want, instead of storing the feeder variable separately, if you want to give this entire thing here, that will also work. So if I just copy this and put it here, this is also fine, but because we have already referred this in a variable, I will use the variable here, CSV feeder. So in Gatling, whenever you use the feed function, it will refer the data from that particular file, and whenever it is called, every next time it is called, it goes to the next value or the next row. So the first time it will go to the first row or the first value. If I call the same feed function again in the same session, it will go to the next row or the next value. Okay, so I have called this feed in my scenario here. Now in this particular demo, I'm not using any actual request. I just want to check if I'm able to refer the values from my CSV file, and for that I will just print the values. So if I go to if I try to get some code from the Gatling official documentation, if you search for Gatling debugging, yes, you can see in the debugging page here is a code just to print the values in the session. So I will take the Scala example. You can take the example as per your language you are using, and I'm taking this example and I will add this here. Okay, so this will take the values from the session. So here we are printing. So let us say I will print we have name here, name, job and ID. So I will print name and I will print job, value of job, and I will print value of ID. And also, just to for easy readability, I can append something before this value. So I can say here name colon, then I can say here job colon, and the value will be printed, and here I will say ID colon and the value of the ID. So this is our scenario now, and to run the scenario I will go to the setup part and say setup and call the scenario name, which is scn, and I will say dot inject, and I'll just say the strategy is at once user and use with a single user. So you can now save and run this script, and here I will select the script which is at index number 4. So if I run this, you can see it is throwing an error because we don't have any requests in our simulation, but that is fine. What we want to check is in the logs if we are able to refer the values, and yes, you can see we are able to refer the values. So because we have used the feed once and we are calling it once, it is referring the first set. Now let us say if we call it again, and if we refer the feed again, so let us say at the end I will add some pause of maybe 1 second, and this entire thing starting from dot feed until here I will call it once again here, and let us see what happens now. So I will save and run the engine class and run the script, and you can see here it is going to the next row. So this is our first row, this is our next row. Now let us try, we have 3 sets of data, and let me try to add it 2 more times. So this is, I have already added this feed 2 times. I will add it 1 more time and 1 more time. That means total of 4 times we have added this, right? So now I will save and run. Let us see what happens when it reaches the end of the line or reaches the last row. So here I will run this script, And yes, you can see here, because we are using the strategy as circular, so here it is referring the first row, the second row, the third row, and after the third row it is going back to the first row. So that means this is working fine, and because we are using the circular strategy here, so it is circling back to the first row after it reaches the end of the rows or end of the line. Okay, so this is all working fine. Now here, instead of manually repeating the block manually, you can just add the repeat block. So here I can say dot repeat, and I can give in the bracket how many times I want to repeat. So I will say 4 here, and then give a curly bracket start, and the curly bracket stop at the end here, after this pause at the end here. And now I will also have to remove this dot, because now it is inside this repeat block, and then I will remove all these blocks I have added for feed manually. Okay, so I will remove all this, and now you can see our code looks very clean. We have this scenario which is getting repeated 4 times. So it is similar to what we did earlier, but now we are using a repeat block. So let us check this. I will run the engine class and select the script and run it, and looks like it is working fine, and it is running the scenario 4 times. So we are able to refer it, and it is circling back to the first row. Okay, now also suppose I remove the repeat block, or let me just make it 1. Repeating 1 time is as good as not using the repeat block, and here I will increase the user count. So instead of 1 user, I am seeing 4 virtual users here. Let us see what happens now. So save your script and run the engine class, and here I will select the script, and let us see what happens. So if you see here, it is doing the same thing. We are using 4 virtual user. Every user is referring a new row, a different row from the CSV. So this is the first virtual user using the first row, second virtual user using the second row, and so on. And this is what we generally want in a performance test. When we have to refer data from external file like CSV, we want different users to refer different sets of data, and this is how we can achieve it in a performance test. Okay, so we have done this. You can also see all these examples. I will keep this document in the I will keep a link of this document in the description. You can always refer from here. You can also copy the code from here if you have to. Okay, so all this we have done. We have already seen how to use the repeat function. Okay, now until now we have seen an example without a request. We have just seen a demo of how to use feeders, how to use data from CSV. We have not used an actual request, but in case you have an actual request and you have to refer the data from CSV, this is the syntax. We say hash and give the column name. So let us say I will have another scenario. So for that, let me take an example of let us go to the Gatling computers database application, the demo application from Gatling, and here if I go here, I will very quickly create a request for this. So for this, the first thing I will have to do is, now I will have to add a protocol section. So I will say val http, and I will say here http dot base URL, and I will give a base URL. So let me just give the base URL until here. Okay, and if you want, you can add other headers as well. Just in case you want, you can refer any of your earlier scripts. So here if I go to any of my earlier scripts, you can see how this was generated when we recorded. So this is base URL, and then we have other headers as well, but that's okay. I will just go with the base URL as of now, and I will check if there are any errors later. So we have our base URL here, and now I will go to the scenario part, and we have to create a request. So I will go here and create another .exec block after the pause, and I will say HTTP and give a request name, and I will say this is computers pages demo. You can name it anything. Okay, and then I will say this is a get, and I will give the endpoint. So let us say I want to go to this page, which is /computers. We have already given the earlier part in the base URL, so I'll just give a I'll go here, and that's it. For now I'm just going here, and now if I have to run the scenario now, I will also have to give the protocol in the setup part. So I will say dot protocols here and give the protocol name which I have given, which is HTTP protocol. Okay, let me run this and check first, and I will do the parameterization later. I'm running this just to check if this is working fine. So I will run the engine class, and I will run my script number 4 here, and you can see now we don't have any errors because now we are running an actual request, and also everything looks fine. If I open and check the report, so this looks all fine, and here it is going to that computers page. Okay, now let us say in my CSV file, you can create a new CSV file or you can use the existing CSV file. I will have one more column called pages, and here I will give the pages. So let us say this is computers page. I will give it here. Then in the second data set, let us say when I go to new computer, this is the page, so I will give it here. And let me say one more computers page, maybe this particular computer. So this is going to a particular computer, and all these are get requests, so I can use it in the same request. Okay, so this is how my CSV file looks like now. I have got a new column called pages, and these are the values. Now I will go back to my script, and here I have to, because see we are already using the feed here, and all this what we are doing is under this feed function. So that means we can refer data from our CSV file. So instead of hard coding this computers here, I will say hash, and in the curly brackets I will use the column name which is pages, and let us see what happens now. Okay, so it should refer this pages from here, and let us see what happens now. I will save and run the engine class, and I will use script numbers 4 here, feeders demo, and run it. Okay, looks like it passed, and if I check the report, so you can see everything looks okay here. And if I go to the details, now here it is showing me a single page, computers pages demo, and that the reason is because we have hard coded it in our request name. So what I can do is, just for checking if it is able to refer and to get different pages there in the report, I can say here in the name as well, I can refer this hash pages. So I can say if I want to append something, I can also append like this and say it like this, hash pages. And also if I want to print it here, just for checking in the console, I can also print it here as well. So I will call this here, the column name is pages. Okay, so this time this should get print on the console. This will print the page name on the console, and this will print the page name in the report, and this will is the actual get request. So I will save and run the engine class again, and I will select the simulation number 4 here, give some description and run it. So looks like everything is fine, there are no errors, and if I check on the console, you can see it is referring the pages. First is referred computers, then computers new, then computers 381, then again it circled back to the first value. And now if I check the report, so here also you can see here it is able to refer our request names and give it is referring the pages in the request names here. I can check this in the details part as well. So this is all running fine. We have page computers 381 and page computers new. Okay, so this all is working fine, and we are able to refer our data from our CSV file. Okay, so we have seen how to use feeders, and we have also discussed this. Every time we use the feed function, it gets to the next row from the CSV. We have seen the strategies as well, and here we can also use the repeat function to repeat the block, or we can also use multiple virtual users to use data from different sets of the CSV file. Okay, so this is done. Now here we have reached until the feeders part. Here we have done API and feeders. Now in the coming sessions we will look at correlation, command line, assertions, and all these topics. So all this will be coming in the next part. I hope this was very useful. If you have any questions, any doubts, you can let me know in the comment section. I will see you in the next part. Thank you for watching, and never stop learning.